Hello and welcome to Craftiosity, the subscription box of modern craft kits. This month's project is all about rolling and sculpting your way to an artisan pot. You're making a terracotta pot with a white interior and partially scored and speckled finish outside. Use your finished pot to store your art supplies as a desktop pen holder, or add a waterproof lining and pop a little plant inside. Inside your kit you'll find your clay, your rolling pin, a modelling tool and a brush, your white paint and PVA glue, and your sandpaper. You'll also find your step-by-step photo instructions with a note card for your pinboard. Cut the circle template out on the outside of the black line. This is a template for the base of your pot. As a tip, turn the paper as you cut and keep your scissors in the same place rather than the other way around. Prepare the area ready to roll your clay. Use a smooth, flat surface that can be wiped clean. Have a small bowl of water and a damp cloth or kitchen roll to hand. Using the pointy end of the modelling tool, cut approximately a third of the clay and roll it into a large ball. Cover the remaining clay back up using the packet and place a damp cloth over the top to stop it drying out for now. Using your rolling pin, roll the ball for your base out until the clay is around 1 centimetre thick and the circle template will fit on top. Don't roll the clay too thin, chunkier is better for this make. Keep hold of the excess clay that you cut away at this point. Place the circle template on top of the rolled clay and use the pointy end of the modelling tool to cut around the base. If you have any jagged edges or indentations on your base, you can use a damp cloth or kitchen roll to gently smooth them out, but make sure you don't distort the shape of the base or flatten it too much. Place the base to the side underneath a damp cloth to stop it drying out. Using the scraps from the clay that you cut away when making the base, roll 3 small balls approximately 2 centimetres high. Try to make these 3 balls as even as possible in size, as they'll form the feet of your pot. Carefully wrap the balls in a damp cloth or tea towel and place in a sealed bag until you're ready to add them to the pot later. Take the remaining 2/3 of the clay from the packet and roll it into a thick sausage about 20 centimetres long. Using the rolling pin, roll the sausage out into a long rectangle until it measures at least 10 centimetres tall and 32 centimetres wide and is at least 1 centimetre thick. Pay close attention to keeping the thickness of the clay even across the width of the piece. You'll now cut the rectangle to be 32 centimetres wide. Trim one short edge with a straight line, then use a ruler or tape measure to measure 32 centimetres to the opposite side. Cut the other edge in a sharp straight line. Trim the long edges of the rectangle so that the edges are straight and you have 4 crisp corners. Your rectangle should measure 10 centimetres high. Starting 5 centimetres up from the base of the rectangle and 16 centimetres in from the right hand edge, mark out 4 horizontal lines, each 1 centimetre apart, using the edge of the modelling tool like a knife. You can eyeball this if you're happy with gently wobbly lines, or you can use a ruler if you'd prefer a very crisp look. Using the other end of the modelling tool and holding it flat, use the rounder tip to make the horizontal lines deeper and wider. Make sure that you don't go all the way through the clay, you just want to indent by a few millimetres. Gently turn your clay by 90 degrees. Use the pointy edge of the modelling tool to mark vertical lines every 1.5 centimetre apart on the top 5 centimetre of the long rectangle. Using the other end of the modelling tool and holding it flat, use the rounder tip to make the vertical lines score deeper and wider. Again, make sure you don't go all the way through the clay, you just want to have that indentation by a few millimetres. When your lines are scored, use a damp cloth or kitchen roll to gently even out any marks or cracks. The smoother you can get your clay now, the less sanding you'll need to do later. Be careful not to distort the shape or push any areas too thin. Turn both the base and the long rectangle over and use the sharp edge of the modelling tool to score a cross-hatch pattern along the bottom 1 cm of the long rectangle and the outside 1 cm and edge of the circle base. The bottom of the rectangle is the edge furthest away from the vertical horizontal lines that you just scored. Run a damp cloth or kitchen roll along the cross-hatching to dampen it. This will help seal the edges together. Carefully lift the long rectangle and wrap it around the outside of the base, ensuring that the edges touch as closely as possible. The short edges of the long rectangle should overlap each other by 1 cm. Use the modelling tool to smooth all the overlapped edges together, especially inside around the base. Start by using the pointy edge across the joins, then use your fingers and water to smooth out and encourage the base and side seams to stick as much as possible. Gently push around the base on the outside to encourage it into the shape that you want. To check you have attached the base to the sides, carefully lift your pot holding the base as you do. It will be a little wobbly and bottom heavy, but if the base falls away, spend a little longer sealing the two parts together before leaving it to dry. Leave the pot to dry on its base for 12 to 24 hours. You need the sides to be dry enough to turn the pot upside down, but the base should still be damp in order to add the feet. And a little tip, leave it to dry at room temperature, don't dry it on top of a radiator. Make sure the feet are still in a damp cloth tea towel during this time or wrapped in a sealed bag so that they don't dry out. To add the feet, ensure the base is still damp but the rest of the pot has dried out enough for the pot to hold its shape. You should be able to see the difference in colour from where the parts have dried to the darker base where it's still damp. Turn your pot upside down and mark out a triangle placement for the 3 feet. Crosshatch score the base and the feet, then use a little water to ensure these areas are damp. Press the scored areas of the feet and the base together, using a little friction to encourage them to adhere to each other. Use enough pressure to ensure a good connection, but don't push so hard that the feet distort in shape. Allow the feet and the base to dry like this for 6 to 12 hours. When the pot is totally dry, it should be pale in colour all over. Wearing a face mask, begin sanding your pot. Sand gently, aiming to smooth out any little marks or distortions in shape, working around the edges of the pot with the sandpaper as you go. Use the sandpaper to smooth the top lip of the pot too to create an even edge. To sand in between the vertical and horizontal lines, fold the sandpaper in half and gently sand inside the line. Be careful not to knock the feet as you're sanding. When sanded smooth, use the paintbrush in your kit to dry brush the outside of the pot and inside the lines to remove any excess dust before the next stage. Using the tissue paper from your box, wrap the top half of the pot where your scored lines are and tuck the tissue paper inside the centre of the pot. To create the paint speckles on the outside of the pot, prepare an area by placing the pot inside a high-sided cardboard box. Squeeze some of the paint out of the bottle and dab the bristles of the brush into it without fully coating the brush. Use your finger to flick the bristles of the brush numerous times to create a speckled pattern on your pot. You might want to practice your technique first inside the box. When you're happy with your speckles, remove the tissue paper and allow the paint to dry. Wash the brush well. When it's dry, use the PVA glue to paint the bottom speckled half of your pot to glaze it. Wash the brush well and allow it to dry. The PVA glue will turn from white to see-through as it dries on the pot. To finish your clay pot, use the white paint and paintbrush to paint the inside of the pot. You might need 2 to 3 coats to get an even coverage. Allow it to dry between each coat. Thanks so much for watching. We hope you've enjoyed this tutorial and we look forward to welcoming you to the next craft kit next month.